Hello, I'm Kai, your host of K Pop Lore. Today we'll be discussing Kyo's Joker roommate, or otherwise known as Intak, the rapper and dancer of P1Harmony, and their debut movie and album P1h A New World Begins and Disharmony Stand Out. Again, I would recommend watching the movie so that way there's no spoilers. And with our last video with Jung, we officially got out of the past. We are now in the present with Intak and Intak alone. So when we start, we see Intak sleeping in class, and then he gets woken up by his friend, and he kind of wakes up loudly and disturbs the class a little bit. So then the bell rings, and it's lunchtime, and he kind of complains to his friend, and then tries to get his friend to buy him lunch because he didn't bring anything for lunch. Then after he gets shut down, we see them at an internet cafe playing a game. His friend isn't doing very well while playing, so he ends up taking over for his friend, and as this happens, a man takes his phone and plugs it into a computer there and does some stuff. We don't fully know what he did, but we'll see later on. Then after he puts Intak's phone back into his jacket, he also uses a very thin blade to get some of Intak's blood. And then Intak starts thinking, like, oh, there's a mosquito. So he tries to find the mosquito, but there isn't one. And then after they finish the round, Intak starts looking for his phone and then finds it in his jacket, which it wasn't there before. Then Intak notices the time and realizes that he's late for his dance lessons with his coach. So he runs out, and on his way, he sees an old lady with a cart who's kind of struggling to cross the street because it's very heavy. So Intak helps her get across the street and then runs the rest of the way to the dance class building. Then he says that since he was late, he'll practice twice as hard and get number one for the competition. The coach kind of scolds him and says, like, that's not why we're doing this. It's about, like, good habits, not just winning. So the next day at school, he sees his friend watching an Alcor broadcast and kind of like, that's all fake anyway. Then a student comes in and says that Intak's teacher would like to see him. So Intak kind of nervously goes to see the teacher. The teacher kind of asks him, like, why haven't you brought in your grandma to talk about careers yet? And he's like, well, like, you can just talk to me about it. You don't need to talk to my grandma. And the teacher's like, well, it's school policy, so I have to talk to your grandma. And he's like, well, can you tell her that my grades are, like, good enough to be a judge? Like, I know they're not, but she'll faint if she realizes that I've been dancing instead of studying, and you'd have to take responsibility for her fainting. So the teacher agrees. He's like, fine, I'll say that you have good enough grades to be a judge. And the entire time he walks out of, like, the teacher's lounge, I guess, he just keeps saying I love you to the teacher. Then later, when he's back at the dance studio with his coach, she kind of picks on him for his grandma wanting him to be a judge and stuff. And so he's kind of like, why did I tell her? And then he's like, no, I'm a dancer. And so he starts dancing to kind of, like, prove it. So, and then after he's done with that, after he, like, does the dance, he kind of complains that his shoulder hurts. And then his coach is like, pack up, we're gonna go, like, get food. And he says to his coach, like, once I'm of legal drinking age, I'm going to, like, get you a drink out of, like, respect. And then she asks him, like, have you drank with, she kind of says, like, oh, you've probably drank before. And he's like, I know I don't study, but I feel like all the other rules a student should. And then she brings up the judge stuff again, and he kind of asks her to stop. And he's like, I'm not going to be a judge, I'm a dancer. And again asks himself, why did I tell her? And then she asks him, you know, like, why do you live with your grandma? And he's like, well, why? What does that have to do with dancing? She's like, well, usually it tends to come from a certain place of, like, having a lot of emotion behind it, and I know, like, nothing about your actual life, so I have no idea where you could get that emotion from. Because he's just super passionate about dancing. Like, other than that, he doesn't have, like, a reason. So then he's like, there's not really much to say. I mean, I was in a car accident when I was 5, and my parents died, but I didn't. And then he was like, and then, because he can't take anything seriously, he brings up how the car seat that he was in ended up selling like hotcakes. So, and then she's like, why can't you be serious about anything? And he's like, serious for what? So then they finally get to the dance competition where he's like, you know, today's the day. I'm gonna get #1. I feel super good about today. And then he's like, what should I use as my stage name? Should I use Judge Huang as my stage name? And then he decides, you know, yeah, Judge Huang. So then they see the Alcor drones and they're like, what's that, you know? And at first they think they're birds, but then they're like, I don't think so. I think it's drones. And then his coach jokes like, oh, well, they're probably here to like record you. So then the Alcor drone shoots the virus pin into this girl's neck, and that starts everything. And then she lashes out, and then other people start getting hit by the pins, and other people start like lashing out. Then eventually his coach gets hit, and he's like trying to figure out kind of like what's going on, because she just randomly stopped, and then she starts chasing him, trying to attack him. So he has to run. Then he gets on top of the roof where some other people were running, and as he tries to run down the stairs, he's met with this fence that has barbed wire at the top. So then the people who are infected with the Alcor virus end up catching up to him, and they do that to him. Then eventually we hear some cracking, and then he goes limp and ends up falling. So then he wakes up after like falling and laying on the ground, and he starts kind of just walking, trying to find a safe place, and he ends up seeing Nuna kind of like calling for help and trying to find her mom. So he ends up picking her up before she can get attacked and leading her to safety. But then we have Ajusi with another girl that I will talk about later. They pull up in a car and they get Intak and Nuna in the car. Then they drive to this safe space and they kind of board everything up, but Intak has to kind of fight the zombies. So then as 3 zombies start coming towards him, he's like, not again. But then they get moved out of the way by Jiyoung, to which he gets very startled by. And then he kind of like turns around, like, what just happened? He sees Jiyoung. He sees Jiyoung and Kyo. They ask who he is. He tells them who he is, and then he's like, you know, like, who are you guys? And they don't answer him, but then they ask what year it is, tells them it's 2020, and they get very happy when he does so. Now this is largely where, like, the movie portion ends. Like, we have them stepping out, and their performance music video of Siren. Intro to Breakthrough is kind of about how he doesn't want to be boxed into, like, a certain way. He kind of just wants to be himself and do what he wants. Intak's lines in Siren are kind of about carving like what he wants to be. Lemonade is about kind of trying to not be boxed in and saying that they should enjoy the lemonade if they can't avoid it. So, and he talks about how he has a dream of like being on stage and how he wants to kind of make the square into a circle or a more rounded shape to where it's not as harsh. That's It is kind of, again, carving out what like he is and his identity. Butterfly is about kind of, again, breaking out or breaking away from social norms. And then in Skit Disharmony 1, he talks about how they're going to elect a class president today. So, and he said that he kind of feels weird about the fact that he's not preparing for like college entrance exams because he's going to be an idol. And we have a ton of like extra info as well, where his nickname is Judge Huang, catchphrase Nuya, which seems to either mean it's you or right. He's scared of elevators, specifically passing the 4th floor. His habit is that he breathes deeply and dances a lot. He also really likes shopping. Dorm roll, planning Jiyoung's route, or making a mess. Also being like the fashion consultant. His charm is his confidence and his smile. An animal that represents him is a golden retriever. His way to relieve stress is through dancing or singing. His favorite food is bread, just any type of bread. He envies Jiyoung's discretion. A hashtag that would describe him is #artist. His relationships with the members or how he views them. Theo as just like a cool guy. Jiyoung as a helper. Jongseob as a partner. Theo as just communication and Soul as potential. And his MBTI is ENFP. And for Intak's power, it's essentially being immortal and being able to heal himself really, really quickly. Thank you for listening to my little deep dive. I hope to see you back for the next episode. We'll be discussing Soul from P1Harmony. Stay safe, eat well, and drink your water. Bye!